Fred Film Radio, I'm David Martos. We are live from the 77th Mostra di Venezia Festival of Venice, and we're with Filip Jan Rymsza, director of Mosquito State out of competition. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
The first question is almost, I'm forced to do it. Is it the right film for a pandemic, Mosquito State?
Well, you don't choose pandemics.
Of course.
Yes.
Or films, maybe.
Yes, maybe. The timing of it is a very strange confluence of events.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly, I kind of, welcomed the challenge of presenting a film like this about urban isolation to everybody who has just gone through their own isolation and will probably go back into isolation at some point soon. So, to me, I think it's a very strange intersect of the film with our current day reality.
Yeah. This is the story of a guy that works in Wall Street, we could say, on the verge of the financial breakdown some years ago. And then there's there are two parallel stories, right? The mosquitoes and this story, and they intertwine. How did you mix up the two lines in your story?
It came from a need in a way, because when I had this idea about a man becoming obsessed with mosquitoes, I try to think of what's the nature of this person, what does he do? And I figured that he would have to be somebody who was obsessive. And it would be much more interesting if his obsession related to his work, and that's the way that he operated. And I thought about somebody who was a mathematician or a programmer, and I read Michael Lewis's book around that time, Flash Boys, about quants, about these guys who programmed algorithms. And to me, there was something with the two. I immediately said, okay, I think this is 2007 New York, and this is a guy who does high-frequency trading models, and these mosquitoes are somehow going to connect to it. And then I started to build, and those ideas obviously started to layer onto each other.
Because the mosquito is somehow a vampire, and capitalist economy is somehow drinking our blood in some ways, right?
That's one way to interpret it.
Okay. I'm teasing you.
I think it's, with a movie like this, the idea is to, it's a very dense film.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to keep it in a way where that's the conversation people would start having. I'm not one to, I like to keep my themes in the film and then for people to discover.
Okay. What about the technical challenges? Because we saw a very, I would say, unique perspective of the mosquito point of view. How was that for a challenge technically?
I think it required quite a bit of visual effects, but there were two approaches to the mosquitoes, because I wanted the mosquitoes as a swarm to have their own consciousness. So I wanted the mosquitoes to move almost in a way that we would find in birds and in starlings, to move in an organized fashion. And then the challenges with obviously shooting then the macro photography of the real mosquitoes, they're obviously very small.
Yeah.
They don't take direction very well.
No.
And being able to the challenge even of being able to keep them in focus when your focal depth is a fraction of a millimeter. So technical challenges like that in terms of the analog approach, not the digital approach, that was certainly difficult to work out. But then from a CGI and from an effect standpoint, we had over 400 shots and 17 different VFX vendors, people who specialized in a very, very narrow thing in terms of the visual quality of the film that I was looking for.
Amazing. You mentioned the situation we're living in, the pandemic. We're in the middle of a huge debate about the future of cinema, about the future of screening rooms and platforms. I don't know if they are opposite, but some people say they are. What's your approach? How do you put yourself in this debate?
I love the theatrical experience. It's to me, to be here with this film, and I actually have Hopper Wells here out of competition as well. But the idea of an in-person festival and being able to celebrate what we do is incredible. There's nothing quite like being in a room together and feeling through a film emotionally and sharing in that experience with other people. There's simply no alternative for it. And I realized that we're going to have to, for the time being, and I'm just speaking to the festival experience, not even to the theatrical experience outside of that, but there's something lost in this hybrid or virtual festival space. I think that for somebody to be able to, step away from something and hit pause, and you try to, with every film, you try to create a mood and a tone and a sense of pacing and obviously in the sense of scale, to be able to see it and hear it, and removing that, it really lessens the experience.
Yeah, well, sorry, it feels safe, right? I mean, we're in the first international film festival in the pandemic, and it feels...
I've never had my temperature taken 50 times a day, and it's wonderful that the festival's taken those measures to make sure that everybody's safe. Obviously, it's an incredible amount of infrastructure that they've been able to implement.
Filip Jan Rymsza, director of Mosquito State Out of Competition here in Venice, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We're in the 77th Mostra di Venezia. I'm David Martos. This was an interview for Fred, the Festival Insider.